Bonjour, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Seth, and welcome to The Critical Alchemist. So, I have a confession to make. I don't usually keep up with a lot of seasonal anime. I'll usually watch the first episode of about 8 or 10 shows every season, but ultimately, only 2 or 3 of those am I going to actually keep up with until the end. Because of that, I thought it would be fun to go over with you guys which anime I decided to watch the first episode of this season, and go over each of those and talk about them, my thoughts on them, and whether or not I'm going to continue watching them. Let's get into it. I'm going to be using myanimelist.net to be able to keep track of all of these, because there's a lot to go over. So if you want to follow along with me, or just check out these shows on your own time, definitely go and check this out. It's really easy to get to the seasonal anime from their homepage, and My Anime List is a really cool website just in and of itself. When thinking about what to start with, there are a lot of anime that are airing this season, obviously, but there's really only one that's getting the most hype around it, that people are talking about the most, as people are the most excited about, as far as I can tell. And that show is the one I want to talk about first, which is Dr. Stone. This, just from the first episode, Dr. Stone is an extremely well-written series and really interesting. The basic premise is that a huge wave of green light envelops the entire Earth and turns everyone into stone for thousands of years. And during that time, nature runs its course, and the entire Earth is kind of reset to a primitive state. Well, after these 1,000 years, our main characters, a pair named Senku and Taiju, who are a pair of high school boys who were friends, they break free from the stone, and they decide to work together to restart civilization, and to rebuild it from absolutely nothing in this primitive world all the way back up to modern science and modern capabilities. This concept actually reminds me in a lot of ways of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, which is one of my personal favorite series. It's the main character has to build a civilization from basically nothing, and as he gains more companions who are able to help in different ways and have different skill sets, over time they're able to build this civilization to get greater and greater, and just you get to see the progress of it in Dr. Stone through a scientific and historical lens, in Slime through more of an economic and a industrial, that's not really quite the right word. Anyway, aside from that, Dr. Stone is actually the only series on this list that I ended up watching the first 2 episodes of, because I just couldn't put it down. Like, after I watched the first episode, it was so cool and so exciting that I just kept going, steamrolled through to the second one, and I can say the second episode was just as good. It's an extremely fun watch, and even though it's based a lot on evolutionary principles that I don't personally believe in, it's still really interesting and quite educational in certain ways, and even the evolutionary elements are things that, even if I disagree with, I find very interesting to learn about and to see kind of in action and in a cool anime format. So this is definitely a series I'm going to continue, and definitely a series I recommend that you check out. So Dr. Stone is a series that I think absolutely lived up to the potential that it had and the hype that it was getting. So next, I'd like to talk a little bit about a series that I feel didn't. To the Abandoned Sacred Beasts is an anime that's airing, and the concept behind it was one that actually kind of had me interested. It's about there's this country that's been in a civil war, and the Civil War involved looks in a lot of ways very similar to the American Civil War. The northern half, they do these scientific super soldier like experiments on people to create people who can transform into beasts from legends, and these people are referred to as incarnates. After that happens, these incarnates start going a little crazy, and have to be kind of dealt with. So the concept behind it did sound interesting to me, but the execution just didn't deliver at all on the potential that it had, in my opinion. The first episode, the pacing was so bad. It just rushes through so much time so quickly that I really felt like I didn't have any time to get invested in what was happening. Like, multiple characters die in the first episode who I just felt like I didn't have a chance to care who they were. And all of it kind of felt like it could have made more sense as just being flashbacks that existed later, because the first episode honestly was just set up for a series that ultimately, from what I can tell, is basically just going to be about anime Wolverine killing cool monsters in violent ways. And yeah, I dropped it after one episode. I know. At this point, we've all come to expect at least one series in the isekai genre to come out every season. And while we definitely have gotten tired of these repetitive series and the tropes involved in them and stuff like that, apparently we're totally eating them up still, because anime studios keep cranking them out. These shows are coming out so much. Like, there's like 5 of them this season. And so I decided I really had to pick up at least one to see, if any of them are actually worth watching. And the series that I decided to try out this season is one called Mao-sama Retry, or Demon Lord Retry. The concept of this is pretty basic. Pretty basic isekai series. The main character is a video game otaku. In this case, he's actually a middle-aged man who is the developer of the game that he ends up being transported into, which is sort of interesting. The thing about it that got me interested was the fact that the description on my anime list talks about the main female lead being a girl with a disabled leg. And I thought, this could be a really interesting thing to explore. There aren't that many stories exploring disabled characters, and I think it can make a really interesting storyline that I really enjoy. Think Toph from Avatar: The Last Airbender, or something like that. So I thought that could be really interesting. Yeah, it wasn't. The disability that the girl has is entirely part of moe pandering, with her character being designed to be just the most protectable small child in existence. Just being, she's treated badly by everyone around her except for our main character. She can't walk well. She's just totally incapable of doing anything on her own. But the reason that it was better than I was expecting is because some of the writing was actually kind of interesting. There was some meta humor in it that was kind of fun. The way that the main character is portrayed, being that he, when he comes into this world, ends up being in the body of the character that he played, who's this who's referred to as a demon lord and kind of wears a mafia boss outfit and, look kind of like that. And he sort of role plays as this character while in the world, so he acts as if he were that character. And I know that's basically the same thing as both Overlord and How Not to Summon a Demon Lord, which are two other isekai series that have come out relatively recently. But I wasn't able to watch either of those because of the content in them, so I think this could be kind of interesting. I haven't officially dropped it or picked it up, but if I end up having some free time and just want something fluffy and easy to watch, I might watch some more of it, so we'll see how that goes. Both of the last shows I talked about were clearly not the greatest, so let's jump into talking about something else that's maybe a little bit more impressive, and that is a series called Fire Force. This series was originally created by the mangaka who wrote Soul Eater, which is a show that I've enjoyed somewhat, and is animated and produced by David Production, who did JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which has some of the greatest animation in anything. Just, it looks pretty darn amazing. So, I was pretty excited about this one, and I think it's pretty good. Honestly, the very first shot in the first episode does an excellent job of setting up the world building. Just, if you look at just that shot, you can get a pretty good idea of what's going on. But to give you more of a clue of what the basic story is, the concept here is that at a certain point in time, people all over the world suddenly started just instantly spontaneously combusting, and they caught fire and turned into these terrible demonic creatures called infernals. And so in order to fight back against the infernals, groups of pyrotechnic people are gathered together in firefighting forces to fight back and destroy these infernals so that they can save the souls of the people who are consumed by the fire and protect anyone else who it might affect. So, that's the basic concept behind it, and execution in this show was really pretty good. The animation definitely lived up to what I was expecting. It looks pretty freaking amazing. Honestly, it just is really cool to look at. The fight scenes in the first episode were just really neat. And the characterization is done really well. The characters are very expressive, and we get to really know our main character well in the first episode and understand his motivations and why he's doing what he's doing. He feels like a really interesting and compelling character, and the other characters, while they didn't really get fully, developed within just the first episode, they definitely have this feeling that they could be really interesting and compelling going forward. I don't have a ton to say about this series, but if you like oh well. If you like shonen battle style series like Soul Eater or My Hero Academia or Dragon Ball, stuff like that, this is definitely going to be something that will appeal to you, and you should definitely try it out because it is a really fun watch, at least so far. So, the next show I'm going to talk about is one that Yeah, I watched the whole first episode, but I didn't really want to. I I didn't like this series at all. And took a lot to make myself watch all the way through this. Um, and it's too bad because the concept behind it sounded kind of interesting. I was expecting it to be at least not bad, which it is not. And this series is called The Ones Within, and it's the concept of it is a bunch of Let's players from uh, across Japan get taken to be in this game where they have to play out different scenarios or games in real life that can be, actually dangerous to their lives. And these are being streamed to people in some way, apparently. And they, in order to be able to get out, have to get, like, can't remember what it is, like 100 million views or something like that. So this whole concept based around being a Let's Player and playing games, except it's kind of a death game situation. It sounds sort of interesting. Not personally my favorite kind of series, but it sounded like it could be good. Ultimately, it was not. The delivery of everything was just kind of awkward, and the story did not measure up to what I was expecting it to be. Um, See, ultimately, it felt less unique and interesting in any way, and felt more like Danganronpa, the isekai. Uh, it just the characters were all weird and not very interesting, and kind of Danganronpa esque, but not done well, I might say. Or maybe even more like Assassination Classroom, but either way, um, these characters were not characterized interestingly at all, especially the protagonist, who's basically just the nicest person ever, and he just nices his way out of everything. Like, they go through two games in the first episode, and the main character manages to pass both of them by being nice to the scary thing that they have to face. And the second game was kind of a Ouija board sort of thing. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but yeah, scary demonic stuff happened there, and I'm very religious. I'm not a huge fan of scary demons portrayed in ways that appear, you know, actually demonic. Kind of drives the spirit away for me, and that's not something I'm okay with. So, yep, this series is being dropped hard by me, and I suggest that you don't pick it up in the first place. The next series is a light novel adaptation called Copcraft. Um, I got about 1 minute into the first episode of this, and they started talking about making drugs out of fairies, and I immediately dropped it. Not my thing. It could have ended up being good, but I'm just not interested. Somebody go watch it for me and tell me how good it was, because I'm not going to. Well, let's top this all off with a show that I hadn't really heard much about, or a lot of hype around it, but was much better than I expected it to be. Kind of the reverse of what a lot of this stuff has been. And don't leave right away after that, because I will be discussing a little bit about some of the shows that I didn't mention here, and why I decided not to mention them yet. But until then, the final series that I ended up watching the first episode of this season is a series called Astra Lost in Space. I believe that's the correct name. Hold on. Yeah, Astra Lost in Space. And I hadn't really heard a lot about this series. I heard a couple of people talking about it online, but not much at all. So it wasn't really on my radar until I started watching shows for this video. And so I didn't really know anything about it going into it, except for what the synopsis on my anime list says, and I was blown away with how really, really great this show is. The basic concept here is that in the distant future, a class of students or a group of students from this school end up going on a field trip to go camping as just their class on another planet for 5 days. So they'll be dropped off on this planet with just them, no adult supervision during that time, which kind of a bad idea in the first place. But aside from that, or beside that point, these characters end up on this planet and they come in contact with this strange orb that sends them thousands of light years away, and they end up in space and just barely are able to find abandoned spacecraft floating out there. And then as they've showed up not millions, but thousands of light years away from where they were supposed to be and have basically no chance of being rescued, they have to figure out how to get home with the limited supplies that they have. So the entirety of this series, I'm assuming, is going to be this journey home that these characters have to take together. And if that doesn't get you interested, what should is just how good the writing in this is with the emotional attachment that you are able to make to the characters in such a short amount of time. The episodes in this show are a little longer than normal. They're like 45 minutes. And the first episode starts out a little roughly. The introduction to the first couple characters is kind of makes them come across as gimmicky or silly, but don't give up just because it doesn't seem great right at first, because it definitely picks up later, especially after they go through the orb. And also, someone tell me I'm not the only person getting Digimon vibes from the beginning of this series. Like, seriously, it really felt like Digimon in space at first. But after they get to that point, you have this part of the first episode where the characters are they're in space, and they're all panicking, and they start being able to work together to figure out what they need to do. They get to this spaceship, and one of them is not there, so they have to go back out and bring her back and rescue her. And just I know I'm kind of rambling and not making a great point, but the thing that's really interesting here is that as these events are going on, you're able to see, just from little facial expressions or little things that the characters say, understand more and more about them as it goes on. Even the characters who don't get a lot of development, you can really tell from everything from their excellent character designs to the way that they move, things about what kind of characters they're going to be. And it's super rewarding to see all these characters who don't get along well at all at the beginning and are very different kinds of people slowly being able to come together in this hard situation and be able to face the odds and make their way home despite everything that's pitted against them. And it's just check out this series. Seriously, this Astra Lost in Space is probably the series that I'm the most excited to continue this season, just because of how much it surprised me as to how good it was. And if people are not talking about this series at the end of the season, it's going to be because they didn't watch it. Because if everyone who watched Dr. Stone watched Astra Lost in Space, I'm willing to bet at least half of them would enjoy it as much as Dr. Stone, if not more. And it, yeah, just check out this series. It's really good. It's so worth your time, and I'm going to be very excited to keep up with it this season. Also, I would like to submit, if I can, if I may, see if I can find her, because I can't remember names extremely well. I did just watch a ton of shows to prepare for this, so forgive me for not remembering the name of every character's. Kitari, Raffaelli. I'm sure I butchered that, but this character, wrong side. This character right here, as best girl of the season. In fact, you can go back and rewatch my waifu tier list video if you want, and replace the next season question mark with her, because excellent character design, really interesting personality that develops so well within just this first episode, and I'm really excited to see more development for her. So yeah, Astra Lost in Space could, if it keeps going the way that it has, it could end up being one of my favorite anime of all time. Who knows? It's definitely good so far. It really gives off a vibe of being kind of the thing that people would really eat up in like the late 90s, early 2000s era, and it deserves all of the hype and praise that it would have or could have got during that time. So as I promised, let's talk a little bit about some of the shows that you might have expected to be on this list that didn't end up making it. The most obvious would be the series Vinland Saga, which is adapted from an older manga that's been really popular for a long time, that's been praised a lot, that's getting an anime adaptation for the very first time. And while I do think Vinland Saga looks extremely good, I also have to worry that it's really not going to be appropriate up to my for my personal standards. It's been compared to Berserk a lot in discussion, from what I can tell, and Berserk is a series that I absolutely cannot watch because of the violence and the nudity and stuff like that. So Vinland Saga, I expect it will be amazing, and it disappoints me that I will not be able to watch it. There are a fair number of sequels this season that I didn't really touch on here, because I pretty much assume that if you watch the first season of a show, you're going to want to watch the next, and if you didn't, you won't. So that's how that goes. But there are some sequels that I am planning on watching. Don Machi Season 2, or Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon Season 2, I'm definitely excited for. I love the first season of it. It was really fun. A really fun series. I may end up watching the Certain Scientific Accelerator series. I have not actually watched any series in that category. I haven't watched the Railgun or Index shows yet. I just haven't got around to them, so I probably won't be watching that one this season, but I might get around to it eventually. Lord El Melioi, I will not be watching, because I am not personally a fan of the Fate series. If you like Fate, go ahead and watch it. It looks good. But, it's not my thing. So I'm going to pass on that one. If none of the shows that are airing this season interest you at all, I don't blame you, honestly. Well, I might blame you a little bit for passing up Dr. Stone and Astra. But aside from that, it's, everyone has their own taste, and that's totally fine. And if you're not really big into watching seasonal anime, or there's nothing this season that really interests you, you could always take this season as an opportunity to watch new classic shows or older shows that you haven't seen or that have been on your watch list for a long time. So allow me now, at the end of this video, to suggest to you a couple of shows that are classic shows that I've been watching recently that I've really enjoyed so far, that I think, if you're looking for recommendations but none of these things piqued your interest, or if you prefer older stuff, or something that is more guaranteed to be good, then I suggest that you check these out. And that would be, the first is the original Macross, Super Dimensional Fortress Macross, SDFM. Yeah, Super Dimensional Fortress Macross, which is one of my favorite mech shows, or older mecha shows that I've watched so far. It's really fun. The characters are excellent. The robots are really cool. And the overall story being told with the Macross ship, and actually it's sort of similar to like Astra in a way. It's like, think like Astra combined with Gundam, if that makes any sense. But yeah, if you're into action series or mecha series or just older classics that really deserve more love than they get, then you should definitely check that one out. And if you do, watch Macross, not Robotech. Yeah. The other one that I'd like to suggest, if that one doesn't pique your interest, is Slayers, which is a fantasy action comedy series that's, I mean, it's not primarily comedy, but the characters in it are so amusing to watch, especially the main character, Lena Inverse, who's one of my favorite female characters in all of anime, and actually one of my favorite characters in all of anime. But she's just one of the most entertaining characters to watch of all time, and I definitely suggest that you check out Slayers if you have not. If you enjoy cool fantasy storylines, or fun comedy, or watching shows, give Slayers a try. It's really worth it. But yeah, I talked about way too many shows in this video to be able to tell you where you can find each one of them individually. And so instead, I'm going to give you a special secret, which is this website that I love to use called because.moe. And this series, I've been talking about anime too much. This website is really cool. It's basically got a catalog of everything that every anime that is available for legal streaming, and basically you can just put in the name of any show and it will tell you and give you links to where you can find it on any legal streaming site. So if any of these shows interest you, just put them in there at because.moe. Just enter them in the search bar and you can find all the legal streaming for all of those shows. And yeah, just go wild with it. The one hitch in that is that because.moe, for some reason, it doesn't really always know if a show is on Netflix. So if you're looking up a show and you can't find it anywhere on there, or it isn't on a streaming service that you use, you could always go also to Netflix and search for it on there to see if it's available there. I don't think any of the shows I talked about today are Netflix shows, but anyway, that's just about all I have to say for this video. So I hope you have a good day and enjoy all of the anime that I've given you these little reviews of. Let me know in the comments if any of these piqued your interest, if you've watched any of them, and if you've enjoyed them as much as I have or less than I have, and tell me how wrong I am about the opinions I've given here. And yeah, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content if you're interested in seeing more of what I have to say or do or whatever. And ring the bell so that you can get notifications for all of that as it comes out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, until next time, I bid you adieu.